The sharp sound of flesh hitting flesh echoed through the first-class cabin. Jasmine Winter's cheek burned as flight attendant Brenda sneered, "Your kind doesn't belong here." Tears welled in Jasmine's eyes as she reached for her phone. Time to make a call that would change everything. Before we dive into this shocking story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever witnessed discrimination and wanted justice to be served. The way this powerful black woman handles what happens next will leave you speechless. Jasmine Winters never forgot where she came from. The cracked sidewalks of Detroit's East Side had been her childhood playground, where her single mother Eloise worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. Those early years shaped her in ways that her current net worth of $4 billion never could. At 37, Jasmine had built Innosphere from a small coding project in her apartment into one of the most innovative tech companies in America. Her revolutionary security software had transformed how data was protected across industries. Yet despite her massive success, Jasmine maintained a deliberately low profile. No flashy mansions in Beverly Hills. No yacht parties with celebrities. She lived comfortably but modestly, and few people outside of tech circles could recognize her by sight. "My mother taught me that true character isn't what you show off, but what you do when nobody's watching," Jasmine often told her executive team. 3 days ago, Jasmine had finalized the acquisition of Legacy Airlines, a mid-sized carrier with a strong route network but declining customer satisfaction ratings. The $14 billion deal had been executed quietly, with public announcement planned for next month after she assessed operational issues. Most Legacy employees, including its flight attendants and pilots, had no idea their company had new ownership. Jasmine had a habit of experiencing her acquisitions as a regular customer before revealing herself. She called it undercover bossing, a chance to see the unfiltered reality of customer service when staff had no idea who was watching. She discovered more about company culture from these experiences than from any executive presentation. But today's flight wasn't just about business. Eloise Winters, the woman who had sacrificed everything to give her daughter opportunities, had lost her battle with aggressive pancreatic cancer just 5 days ago. Jasmine was flying to Atlanta for the funeral, her heart heavy with grief. She'd been working through the night, finalizing acquisition details as a distraction from her loss, and had barely had time to change into comfortable clothes for the flight. Her jeans and simple navy blouse were far from the designer suits she wore to board meeting. But they were practical for travel. The only luxury item she carried was a small diamond pendant containing her mother's picture, a gift from Eloise on Jasmine's 30th birthday. "You'll go places I never could, baby girl," her mother had told her. "Just remember to take me with you." Throughout her rise from coding prodigy to tech CEO, Jasmine had faced countless instances of discrimination. Venture capitalists who spoke only to her white male colleagues during pitches. Security guards following her through upscale stores, hotel staff questioning whether she was really a guest. Each time she remembered her mother's advice, "Success is the best revenge, but kindness keeps your soul intact." This philosophy guided her leadership style. Innosphere was known for its inclusive culture and strict policies against discrimination. When the opportunity to acquire Legacy Airlines appeared, Jasmine saw it as a chance to transform another industry where discrimination often went unchallenged. The acquisition had been finalized at 3 a.m. that morning, making Jasmine the official owner of the very plane she was boarding. Not that anyone working the flight would know. Her executive assistant, Valencia Washington, had arranged her ticket under standard booking procedures, and Jasmine had specifically requested no special treatment. "I need to see what our customers experience," she'd told Valencia, "especially those who look like us." As she settled into her first-class seat, exhaustion from the sleepless night and emotional toll of her mother's death washed over her. All she wanted was a quiet flight to gather her thoughts and prepare for tomorrow's funeral. She never expected that this journey would become a defining moment, not just for her, but for an entire industry. Jasmine looked out the window as the boarding continued, gently touching the diamond pendant containing her mother's photo. "I miss you, Mom," she whispered. "I hope I'm making you proud." She couldn't have known then how much her mother's lessons about dignity and standing up for yourself were about to be tested. The luxury of first class on legacy airlines was supposed to be a respite from the chaos of life. But from the moment Jasmine Winters stepped onto the plane, she felt unwelcome. Tired eyes tracked her movement down the aisle, disapproving glances assessing her casual jeans and simple blouse. An older white couple physically shifted their expensive bags as she passed, as if protecting their possessions. Flight attendant Brenda Parker, a blonde woman in her late 40s with a surgically enhanced smile, was warmly greeting passengers at the front of the first-class cabin. Her smile faltered when Jasmine approached. "Economy boarding is through the rear entrance," Brenda said, not bothering to check Jasmine's ticket. "I'm in first class, seat 2A," Jasmine replied, presenting her boarding pass. Brenda's eyes narrowed as she scanned the document, her lips pursing slightly. "Very well," she said, the warmth in her voice evaporating completely. As Jasmine settled into her window seat, she noticed how Brenda fawned over the businessman across the aisle. "Mr. Hayes, so wonderful to see you again. Can I get you a pre-flight champagne, your usual Krug?" Daniel Hayes, a silver-haired executive type with an expensive watch and tailored suit, accepted the champagne with practiced entitlement. "Thank you, Brenda. You always remember," Jasmine observed as Brenda distributed pre-flight beverages to every first-class passenger except her. When the flight attendant passed by without acknowledgement, Jasmine politely raised her hand. "Excuse me, could I have some water, please?" Brenda's smile tightened. "We'll be serving after takeoff." "But everyone else has been served," Jasmine pointed out quietly. "I'll get to you when I can," Brenda snapped, moving away quickly. The plane took off, and Jasmine closed her eyes, thinking about her mother's funeral arrangements. She hadn't slept in nearly 30 hours, grief and work combining into a fog of exhaustion. When she opened her eyes 20 minutes later, the drink service was already finishing up. Somehow, Brenda had managed to serve everyone around her without waking her. "Excuse me," Jasmine called as Brenda passed again. "I still haven't received any beverage service." "You were sleeping," Brenda replied curtly. "I'd still appreciate some water, please." With visible reluctance, Brenda poured water into a plastic cup rather than the glass tumblers other passengers had received, practically dropping it onto Jasmine's tray table. Water splashed onto Jasmine's jeans. "Oops," Brenda said without apology. Jasmine took a deep breath, dabbing at her jeans with a napkin. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "Choose your battles wisely." Around her, other passengers were receiving warm towels, pillows, and blankets for comfort. Daniel Hayes across the aisle had been offered a selection of magazines and newspapers. When Jasmine noticed a chill in the cabin, she pressed her call button. 5 minutes passed. 10, 15. Brenda passed by multiple times, serving other passengers while deliberately ignoring the illuminated button above Jasmine's seat. Finally, Jasmine stood up and politely approached Brenda at the galley. "Excuse me, I pressed my call button but didn't receive assistance. Could I please get a blanket? It's quite cold." Brenda turned, arms crossed. "The blankets and pillows are for real first-class passengers. We have limited supplies." Jasmine blinked in confusion. "I am a first-class passenger. I'm in seat 2A. "How did you get that seat exactly?" Brenda asked, her voice carrying enough that nearby passengers turned to watch the interaction. "I purchased a ticket, just like everyone else," Jasmine replied evenly. "Right," Brenda said with heavy skepticism. "And I'm sure there's nothing unusual about that reservation." Jasmine felt her patience wearing thin but maintained her composure. "I'm simply requesting the same service provided to other passengers in my cabin. That's all. Listen," Brenda lowered her voice, leaning closer. "We both know you don't belong in first class. I don't know how you got that seat, but I'm not going to provide premium service to someone who clearly isn't a premium customer." The words stung, but they weren't unfamiliar. Jasmine had heard variations of this sentiment throughout her life, even as she built her company and fortune. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her boarding pass again. "My ticket entitles me to all first-class amenities. I'd like to speak with your supervisor, please." Brenda's face flushed red. Are you threatening me? Not at all. I'm simply requesting to speak with a supervisor about the service discrepancy I'm experiencing. By now, several passengers were openly staring. Daniel Hayes smirked from his seat, while an elderly white couple whispered behind their hands. You need to return to your seat right now, Brenda ordered. I will, after you provide the blanket I requested or allow me to speak with a supervisor, Jasmine insisted calmly. You people always think you're entitled to special treatment, Brenda hissed. You people? Jasmine repeated, her voice still measured despite the blatant racism. I'm calling the captain to have you removed at our next stop, Brenda threatened, reaching for the cabin phone. Jasmine held out her boarding pass one more time. Please, just look at my ticket. I'm in the correct seat and entitled to the same service as other first-class passengers. That's when it happened. As Jasmine extended her arm with the boarding pass, Brenda's hand came up in a swift, practiced motion. The slap connected with Jasmine's cheek with enough force to snap her head to the side. The sharp sound cut through the ambient noise of the cabin, leaving a sudden, shocked silence in its wake. Your kind doesn't belong here, Brenda sneered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Jasmine's cheek burned as tears of shock and humiliation welled in her eyes. In that moment, she wasn't a billionaire tech CEO or the owner of the airline. She was just another black woman being told she didn't belong. Captain Kenneth Wilson's voice came over the intercom. This is your captain speaking. We've been informed of a situation in the cabin. We'll be returning to the gate to address this matter. Flight attendants, prepare the cabin for arrival. As Jasmine walked back to her seat, she could feel eyes on her from every direction. Her hand reached up to touch the stinging cheek, then moved to the diamond pendant containing her mother's photo. Drawing strength from the memory of Eloise, she took out her phone, no longer concerned about the devices off policy. It was time to make a call that would change everything. The sting on Jasmine's cheek pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat as she sat rigidly in her first-class seat. Around her, the cabin buzzed with whispered conversations and darting glances. Some passengers looked horrified at what they'd witnessed. Others seemed smugly satisfied that someone they deemed an interloper had been put in her place. What would you do if you witnessed someone being physically assaulted for simply requesting equal treatment? Comment number 1 if you believe Brenda was completely out of line, or number 2 if you think Jasmine should have just kept quiet. Hit that like button if you've ever stood up against discrimination, and subscribe to see how Jasmine handles this shocking situation. Are you okay? A soft voice broke through Jasmine's shock. A young Latina woman in the row behind her leaned forward, offering a tissue. I'm Emily Rodriguez. What that woman did was completely unacceptable. Thank you, Jasmine whispered, taking the tissue. I'm Jasmine. Across the aisle, Daniel Hayes didn't bother hiding his amusement. Should have known your place, he muttered, just loud enough for Jasmine to hear. Brenda strutted back through the cabin, her demeanor transformed from customer service professional to victorious enforcer. She stopped beside Jasmine's seat. Security will escort you off the aircraft when we reach the gate, she announced loudly. Assaulting a flight attendant is a federal offense. Assaulting? Jasmine repeated incredulously. You slapped me. That's not how I'll be reporting it, Brenda replied with a smirk. And who do you think they'll believe? The intercom crackled to life. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Kenneth Wilson. We'll be returning to the gate due to a situation in the cabin. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We apologize for the inconvenience. Jasmine's phone was already in her hand. Airline regulations be damned. She had 4 missed calls from Valencia, who was tracking the flight. Put that away immediately, Brenda demanded. Using phones during critical flight phases is against federal regulations. That's another violation I'll be reporting. Ignoring her, Jasmine dialed Valencia's number. That's it. I'm adding interference with a flight crew to the charges, Brenda threatened, reaching for the phone. Jasmine turned away, speaking quickly when Valencia answered. Val, there's been an incident on the flight. A flight attendant just physically assaulted me. They're returning to the gate, supposedly to have me removed. Brenda's face contorted with rage at being ignored. Give me that phone right now. I need you to contact Charles Thompson, Legacy's regional manager, Jasmine continued calmly. Tell him to meet the flight at the gate. Explain that Jasmine Winters requires his immediate attention. Jasmine Winters? Brenda repeated, her hand freezing mid-reach. Something about the name sparked a flicker of recognition, but she couldn't place it. Yes, and I'm also calling our legal team, Jasmine added for Brenda's benefit, though she was still speaking to Valencia. I want them ready to file assault charges and a discrimination lawsuit. The plane began its descent back to the departure gate. Through the window, Jasmine could see 2 security vehicles with flashing lights positioned near the terminal. Brenda noticed them too and smiled triumphantly. Your little phone call won't help you, she said. Security knows how to handle disruptive passengers who don't know their place. Emily Rodriguez, still watching from the row behind, discreetly held up her phone to show Jasmine. On the screen was a video recording of the entire incident, including the slap and Brenda's "Your kind" comment. Emily nodded reassuringly. As the plane docked at the gate, Captain Kenneth Wilson emerged from the cockpit, a tall man with a stern expression. He conferred briefly with Brenda, who pointed accusingly at Jasmine. Ma'am, I need you to remain seated while we sort this out, the captain said to Jasmine, his tone professional but cold. The cabin door opened, and Charles Thompson rushed aboard, followed by 2 security officers. Charles was a middle-aged white man in an impeccable suit, the very picture of corporate authority. His eyes scanned the cabin frantically until they landed on Jasmine. Ms. Winters, he said, his voice strained with anxiety. I came as soon as I received word. Brenda looked between Charles and Jasmine, confusion replacing her smugness. You know this woman? Charles ignored her question, addressing Jasmine directly. Ms. Winters, I can't express how deeply disturbed I am to hear about this incident. Would you prefer to discuss this matter privately? That won't be necessary, Charles, Jasmine replied evenly. Since this humiliation happened publicly, we can address it publicly. Brenda stepped forward. Mr. Thompson, this passenger has been disruptive and combative. She needs to be removed from the aircraft immediately. Charles turned to Brenda with an expression of barely contained horror. Ms. Parker, do you have any idea who this passenger is? I don't care if she's the Queen of England, Brenda retorted. She doesn't belong in first class. A painful silence fell over the cabin. Captain Wilson, sensing something was very wrong, stepped back slightly. Brenda, Charles said, his voice quivering. You just physically assaulted Jasmine Winters, the CEO of Innosphere and, as of this morning, the new owner of Legacy Airlines. The color drained from Brenda's face. Her mouth opened and closed without producing sound. That's right, Jasmine said, rising from her seat. I own this plane, I own this airline, and you just made it abundantly clear why I needed to acquire it. The shock that spread across Brenda's face was matched by the collective gasp from passengers who recognized the name of the tech billionaire. Daniel Hayes nearly choked on his champagne. I didn't know, Brenda stammered. You weren't dressed like... Like what? Jasmine asked. Like someone who belongs in first class? Like someone who deserves basic human dignity and respect? Emily stood up from her seat. I have the entire incident recorded, Ms. Winters, including the discriminatory comments and the assault. Charles Thompson looked like he might faint. Ms. Parker, please gather your personal belongings and exit the aircraft immediately. Your employment with Legacy Airlines is terminated, effective immediately. You can't do that, Brenda protested, panic replacing her earlier confidence. Actually, I can, Jasmine corrected her. But more importantly, I need to get to Atlanta today. My mother's funeral is tomorrow, and I don't have time for this nonsense. The revelation silenced the cabin completely. Even Daniel Hayes had the decency to look ashamed. As security escorted a shell-shocked Brenda from the plane, Jasmine returned to her seat, her hand instinctively finding the diamond pendant with her mother's photo. The incident was far from over, but in this moment, she could almost hear Eloise Winters' voice. Sometimes, baby girl, justice comes when you least expect it. How do you think this story will unfold? Will Jasmine seek revenge, or will she use her power to create meaningful change? And what will happen to Brenda now that her true colors have been exposed? The atmosphere in the first-class cabin transformed as if someone had flipped a switch. Security officers who had arrived to remove Jasmine were now escorting a visibly shaken Brenda Parker off the plane. The flight attendant's face had lost all color, her previous confidence shattered by the revelation of who Jasmine really was. "This is a mistake," Brenda protested as she was led down the aisle. "I was just following procedures for suspicious passengers." No one responded to her claims. The passengers who had previously smirked at Jasmine's humiliation now stared at their laps, suddenly fascinated by the in-flight magazines or their fingernails. Charles Thompson hovered anxiously near Jasmine's seat. "Ms. Winters, I cannot begin to express how deeply sorry I am for this inexcusable incident. If you'd prefer, I can arrange a private flight to Atlanta immediately." Jasmine shook her head. "That won't be necessary, Charles. I want to continue on this flight as scheduled. I need to reach Atlanta today for my mother's funeral." Charles's face softened with genuine sympathy. "I'm very sorry for your loss, Ms. Winters. Please accept my condolences." "Thank you," Jasmine replied. "What I need now is for this flight to resume with professional service for all passengers, regardless of how they're dressed or what they look like." "Of course." Charles nodded vigorously. "I've already arranged for a replacement crew to board immediately. This delay will be minimal." Within 15 minutes, a new flight crew had boarded. The replacement flight attendants, clearly briefed on the situation, were models of professional courtesy to everyone, especially Jasmine. They provided her with a premium blanket, pillow, and a fresh glass of water in proper glassware without being asked. Captain Wilson, who had remained aboard, personally approached Jasmine's seat. "Ms. Winters, on behalf of the flight crew, I want to apologize for what happened. I had no idea of the situation until I saw it unfold at the gate." "Thank you, Captain," Jasmine replied. "I appreciate your professionalism. Let's get everyone to their destinations safely." As the plane prepared for its second takeoff attempt, Daniel Hayes cleared his throat from across the aisle. "Ms. Winters, Daniel Hayes, CEO of Hayes Pharmaceuticals." He extended a business card between two manicured fingers. "I've been following Innosphere's impressive growth. Perhaps we could discuss potential synergies between our companies." Jasmine gave him a measured look, remembering his earlier comment about her knowing her place. "Mr. Hayes, I generally don't conduct business with people who take pleasure in watching others being discriminated against," she replied evenly. "But I'll have my assistant send you information about Innosphere's anti-bias training program. Your company might benefit from it." Hayes withdrew his card, his face flushing with embarrassment. As the plane took off for the second time, Emily Rodriguez leaned forward from the row behind. "Ms. Winters, I transferred the video to my cloud storage. I'm happy to share it with you if it helps." Jasmine turned to face her. "Thank you, Emily. That's very kind. May I ask why you decided to record the incident?" Emily's expression darkened. "I've been on the receiving end of similar treatment. Not everyone has the power to fight back like you do. When I saw what was happening, I thought at least there would be evidence." Jasmine nodded, understanding completely. "I'd appreciate a copy of the video, and I'd like your contact information if you don't mind." Throughout the cabin, whispers spread as passengers Googled Jasmine Winters on their phones, discovering the extent of her success and influence. The same people who had avoided eye contact with her earlier now attempted to catch her attention with polite smiles. As the flight progressed, Jasmine sat quietly, gazing out the window. The confrontation had stirred up memories of countless similar experiences throughout her life. The boutique where a saleswoman had followed her around, certain she was shoplifting. The real estate agent who forgot to show her premium properties. The venture capitalist who asked if she was really the technical co-founder of her own company. Her mother had always told her, "Success doesn't shield you from prejudice. It just changes how it shows up." How right Eloise had been. Even with billions in her accounts, Jasmine still faced the same assumptions and discrimination that had followed her since childhood. Her phone buzzed with a message from Valencia. "PR team assembled. legal standing by. How do you want to proceed? This was the question Jasmine had been contemplating. She could use her power to destroy Brenda Parker's career and make an example of her. A discrimination lawsuit against Legacy Airlines would be straightforward with Emily's video evidence. The publicity would be substantial, but Jasmine thought about the bigger picture. One flight attendant's termination wouldn't address the systemic issues that allowed such behavior to flourish. For every Brenda Parker, there were dozens of others who expressed their biases in subtler ways that wouldn't result in viral videos or lawsuits. She typed back to Valencia. This isn't about one flight attendant. I want a complete audit of customer complaints across Legacy Airlines, focusing on potential discrimination patterns. Pull HR records for all employees with similar complaints. Let's find out how deep this problem goes. Valencia's response came quickly. Already on it. Early findings suggest this isn't isolated. We'll have preliminary report ready when you land. Jasmine glanced at her mother's photo in the diamond pendant. Eloise hadn't raised her to seek vengeance. She'd taught her to create lasting change. The slap that had stung her cheek would become the catalyst for transformation across an entire company. As the plane began its descent into Atlanta, Jasmine made another decision. She typed a final message to Valencia. Schedule a company-wide town hall for all Legacy Airlines employees for next week. It's time they meet their new owner. The replacement flight attendant approached with a warm smile. Ms. Winters, we'll be landing in Atlanta shortly. Is there anything else you need? Jasmine returned the smile. No, thank you, but I would like to know your name. Shannon Williams, Ms. Winters. It's an honor to serve you. Thank you for your professionalism, Shannon. I look forward to seeing more of that quality throughout Legacy Airlines in the future. As the plane touched down in Atlanta, Jasmine knew this was just the beginning. The power had shifted, not just on this flight, but across an entire corporate culture. And she intended to use that power not for retribution, but for meaningful, lasting change. As the plane taxied to the gate at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, Jasmine could see Valencia Washington waiting in the terminal, her tall figure distinguished by impeccable posture and a tailored burgundy suit. At 35, Valencia wasn't just Jasmine's chief operating officer. She was her closest confidant and had been with Inosphere since its early startup days. The moment Jasmine stepped into the terminal, Valencia embraced her. "I'm so sorry about what happened," she said, examining the faint mark still visible on Jasmine's cheek. "And I'm even more sorry you're dealing with this while grieving your mother." "It's okay, Val," Jasmine replied, though they both knew it wasn't. "Did you bring what I asked for?" Valencia nodded, handing over a leather portfolio. "Preliminary findings from our acquisition audit team. It's worse than we thought." They walked briskly through the airport to a waiting car, Valencia briefing Jasmine on developments since the incident. News was already spreading through Legacy Airlines' corporate offices. Charles Thompson had called an emergency meeting with department heads. Brenda Parker had hired an attorney specializing in wrongful termination. "She's claiming she was the victim," Valencia said with disgust as they settled into the back seat of the town car. "Says you were aggressive and she felt threatened." Jasmine wasn't surprised. "And the video?" "Emily Rodriguez sent it to us. It's clear as day what happened. Our legal team says Brenda doesn't have a case, but she's trying to spin this in the media." As the car navigated Atlanta traffic, Jasmine opened the portfolio Valencia had given her. Inside was a preliminary report compiled by Inosphere's acquisition audit team, who had been quietly reviewing Legacy Airlines' internal systems since negotiations began. The contents made her blood boil. Customer complaints about discriminatory treatment had been systematically buried. Reports showed Black passengers were 7 times more likely to be questioned about their seating assignments. Middle Eastern passengers were 3 times more likely to be reported as suspicious. Asian passengers had their requests for assistance ignored at twice the rate of white passengers. "This can't be coincidence," Jasmine said, flipping through the data. "It's not," Valencia confirmed grimly. "Keep reading." The next section of the report revealed internal messaging groups where certain Legacy employees, including senior staff, shared racist jokes and commentary about passengers. The messages included code words for profiling customers and instructions on how to provide selective service without triggering discrimination complaints. They actually had a system for this? Jasmine asked incredulously. They called it passenger prioritization, but it was straight-up discrimination, Valencia explained. And look who approved these communication guidelines. Jasmine turned the page to find a memo authorized by Lawrence Phillips, Legacy Airlines HR director, explicitly instructing customer service staff to use discretion in service allocation and prioritize passengers who represent the Legacy Airlines brand image. This goes all the way up to senior management, Jasmine realized. Valencia nodded. And it gets worse. We found dozens of discrimination complaints that were filed internally and then buried. Some employees who reported concerns were pushed out of the company. The car pulled up to the Winters family home in Atlanta's historic West End neighborhood. Though Jasmine could have afforded mansions around the world, she had instead renovated her childhood home after her success, preserving its character while adding modern comforts. It was here that Eloise had chosen to spend her final days. "The funeral home called," Valencia said as they walked to the door. "Everything is arranged for tomorrow as Eloise wanted." Jasmine nodded, momentarily overwhelmed by grief. The house still felt full of her mother's presence. The carefully tended plants, the collection of jazz records, the handmade quilts draped over furniture. "Ms. Winters?" a voice called from the kitchen. Jasmine recognized Andrea Bennett, her mother's home health nurse during her final months. "I'm so sorry about Ms. Eloise. She was a remarkable woman." "Thank you for everything you did for her, Andrea," Jasmine replied, embracing the nurse. "She was so proud of you," Andrea said, "especially about that airline purchase. Said you were going to shake things up for the better," as she put it. The comment brought a sad smile to Jasmine's face. Her mother had known about the Legacy Airlines acquisition and had been enthusiastic about Jasmine's plans to improve the company culture. Valencia set up an impromptu command center in the dining room, coordinating with InnoSphere's legal and public relations teams. Jasmine joined her after taking a moment to collect herself in her mother's bedroom. "Emily's video is starting to circulate online," Valencia reported. Legacy's stock dropped 4% in the last hour as investors react to the discrimination allegations. Jasmine's phone rang. Charles Thompson calling for the third time. She finally answered, putting him on speaker. "Ms. Winters, I've initiated a full internal review of the incident," he began, his voice strained. "Ms. Parker's actions were completely unauthorized and not representative of Legacy Airlines' values." "Really, Charles?" Jasmine interrupted. "Because I'm looking at internal communications suggesting discriminatory service is not just tolerated, but systematically implemented at Legacy." A long pause. I wasn't aware of any such policy." "Then you were deliberately kept in the dark, or you're lying to me," Jasmine replied coolly. "Either way, it's a problem. I want complete access to all HR records, customer complaints, and internal communications for the past 5 years." "That's quite an extensive request," Charles hedged. "There are privacy concerns. I own the company, Charles. Those records belong to me now. Have them ready by tomorrow evening." After ending the call, Jasmine turned to Valencia. "We need to talk to other employees who've experienced or witnessed discrimination. Can we set up confidential channels for them to come forward?" Valencia was already typing on her laptop. "I'll have our HR team create an anonymous reporting system by tomorrow, but we should expect resistance from Legacy's current management." "Speaking of which," Jasmine said, "what do we know about Lawrence Phillips? He seems to be at the center of this." Valencia pulled up a profile. "Lawrence Phillips, 56, HR director at Legacy for 11 years. Previously worked at 2 other airlines that faced discrimination lawsuits during his tenure, though he was never personally named. He's well connected in the industry and has a reputation for handling problems quietly. In other words, burying complaints and pushing out whistleblowers," Jasmine translated. "Exactly. And he's already making moves. Our sources say he held a meeting with senior staff after news of the incident broke, instructing them to delete certain communications and prepare consistent messaging about company policies. Obstruction and evidence tampering, Jasmine noted. Document everything. Our legal team will need it. As evening fell, Valencia's phone chimed with an alert. She checked it and frowned. Brenda Parker just gave an interview to local Channel 4 News. She's claiming she felt threatened by an aggressive passenger and was just following security protocols. They watched the clip together. Brenda, now dressed conservatively with subtle makeup, portrayed herself as a dedicated professional concerned about flight safety. In today's world, flight attendants have to be vigilant, she told the reporter, her voice trembling slightly. I was simply following our training to address potential threats. That's completely contradicted by the video, Valencia said angrily. Which is why she's trying to get ahead of the story before the video goes viral, Jasmine replied. Classic Darvo: deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. The situation grew more complex as reports came in throughout the evening. Legacy Airlines' stock continued to fall as investors worried about potential discrimination lawsuits and bad publicity. Lawrence Phillips had issued a statement supporting Brenda and suggesting the incident was being mischaracterized. Most concerning was what Valencia discovered when she dug deeper into the company's complaint records. A clear pattern of similar incidents that had been systematically downplayed or ignored, particularly when they involved passengers of color. This isn't about one flight attendant with bias, Jasmine realized as she reviewed the files. The entire corporate culture at Legacy is built on discrimination, and it's been deliberately cultivated by leadership. As Jasmine prepared for her mother's funeral the next day, she felt a strange convergence of grief and purpose. Eloise had always taught her to stand up against injustice, not just for herself, but for everyone who faced discrimination. Mom always said that power comes with responsibility, Jasmine told Valencia as they finalized plans for addressing the growing crisis. She wouldn't want me to just fire one flight attendant and consider the matter closed. She'd want me to fix the broken system. Valencia nodded in agreement. So what's our next move? Jasmine looked at a photo of her mother on the wall, Eloise standing proudly at Jasmine's college graduation, beaming with pride. Tomorrow, we lay my mother to rest. The day after, we begin dismantling the culture of discrimination at Legacy Airlines, starting at the top. What would you do if you discovered that one incident of discrimination was actually part of a company-wide problem? Comment number 1, if you think Jasmine should clean house and fire everyone involved. Or number 2, if you believe in giving people a chance to change. Don't forget to like this video if you're inspired by how Jasmine is handling this difficult situation. Subscribe to find out what dramatic changes are coming to Legacy Airlines. The morning of Eloise Winter's funeral dawned with a gentle rain that seemed fitting for the occasion. Jasmine stood before the mirror in her childhood bedroom, adjusting the simple black dress her mother had always admired. The mark on her cheek from Brenda's slap had faded to a faint shadow, easily concealed with makeup, but the emotional impact remained raw. Your mother would be so proud of how you're handling everything, Valencia said, entering the room with a cup of tea for Jasmine. Managing a corporate crisis while preparing to say goodbye to her, that takes extraordinary strength. Jasmine accepted the tea gratefully. Mom was the strong one. She taught me everything I know about dignity and perseverance. The funeral service at Ebenezer Baptist Church was beautiful in its simplicity. Eloise had been well loved in her community, and the historic church was filled with neighbors, friends, and former colleagues. Jasmine had specifically requested no corporate presence. This day was about her mother, not business connections. When it came time for the eulogy, Jasmine approached the podium with measured steps, drawing strength from the diamond pendant containing her mother's photo. My mother, Eloise Winters, understood something fundamental about human dignity, she began, her voice steady despite her grief. She believed that every person deserves respect, regardless of their appearance, background, or circumstances. She taught me that lesson not just through her words, but through how she lived her life. Jasmine shared stories of Eloise's quiet strength, how she'd worked multiple jobs to provide opportunities for her daughter, How she'd stood up to discrimination in her own life with unwavering grace. How she'd counseled Jasmine through the challenges of building a tech company in an industry dominated by white men. When I faced doors that seemed closed to people who looked like me, my mother would say, "Don't just knock, build your own door." That philosophy guided me through every obstacle, and when success came, she reminded me that true achievement isn't measured by wealth, but by the positive change you create in the world. As Jasmine concluded her eulogy, rain gave way to sunshine streaming through the church's stained glass windows. Yesterday, on my way to say goodbye to my mother, I experienced the kind of discrimination she fought against her entire life. And in that moment, I heard her voice telling me, "This isn't just about you, baby girl. This is about changing the system for everyone who comes after you." That's the legacy my mother leaves behind, not just for me, but for all of us. A commitment to creating a world where dignity isn't something you have to fight for. It's something freely given to every human being. Many in the congregation were moved to tears by Jasmine's words. After the service, as they proceeded to the cemetery for interment, Valencia discreetly showed Jasmine her phone. The incident on the plane had indeed gone viral. Emily's video had been shared millions of times, and #justice for Jasmine was trending nationally. "We need to leave immediately after the burial," Valencia whispered. "Media has gathered outside the cemetery, and Lawrence Phillips has called an emergency board meeting at Legacy to discuss recent events." Jasmine nodded, her attention divided between her personal grief and the growing professional crisis. After laying her mother to rest, she slipped away through a private exit with Valencia, avoiding the reporters who had gathered. In the car, Valencia briefed her on developments. Brenda's given 3 more interviews portraying herself as the victim. Lawrence Phillips issued a statement claiming the video lacks context and suggesting you were the aggressor. "They're trying to control the narrative." "And our response?" Jasmine asked. "Our PR team recommends you make a public statement, but legal advises waiting until we have more information about the extent of discrimination at Legacy. The anonymous reporting system we set up has already received over 50 submissions from current and former Legacy employees describing similar incidents." Jasmine's phone rang. Charles Thompson calling again. She answered on speaker. "Ms. Winters, I've been trying to reach you," he began anxiously. "I was burying my mother, Charles," Jasmine replied, her tone making it clear this was not a reasonable interruption. Of course, my condolences," he stammered. "I'm calling because Lawrence Phillips has convened an emergency board meeting to discuss corporate governance concerns following the acquisition. I believe he's attempting to challenge your authority to make personnel changes." "Is he now?" Jasmine's voice was dangerously calm. "Thank you for the information, Charles. Please continue monitoring the situation and report directly to me." After ending the call, Jasmine turned to Valencia. "They're circling the wagons. Phillips is trying to limit the damage to Brenda while protecting himself and the system they've built." "We expected resistance," Valencia noted. "What's our countermove?" Before Jasmine could answer, her phone lit up with another call, this time from Daniel Hayes, the privileged passenger who had witnessed the incident. "Mr. Hayes," Jasmine answered coolly. "This is unexpected." "Ms. Winters," Hayes replied, his tone professionally cordial. "I wanted to personally express my regret for my behavior during our flight. It was unacceptable." "Yes, it was," Jasmine agreed, not making it easy for him. "Is there something else?" "Actually, yes. I've been contacted by several news outlets seeking my account of what happened. Before responding, I wanted to speak with you directly." Valencia and Jasmine exchanged glances. This was potentially significant. Hayes had been a witness to the entire incident. "I appreciate your courtesy," Jasmine said carefully. "May I ask what you intend to tell them?" "The truth," Hayes replied. "That I witnessed a disturbing incident of racial discrimination by a flight attendant against a passenger who did nothing to provoke it. That I regret my own failure to intervene. And that I believe Legacy Airlines needs to address what appears to be a systemic problem." Jasmine was momentarily surprised by his candor. "That's remarkably forthright, Mr. Hayes. Let's just say your comment about anti-bias training struck home. My company has had its own issues with diversity, and I've been too slow to address them. Sometimes it takes seeing something blatant to recognize the subtler problems in your own organization. After discussing what Hayes had witnessed and his willingness to go on record, Jasmine thanked him for coming forward. The conversation left her thoughtful about how this incident might create ripple effects beyond just legacy airlines. Back at Eloise's house, Jasmine and Valencia reviewed the growing evidence of systematic discrimination at Legacy. Employee testimonials described a culture where racial profiling was tacitly encouraged and complaints were suppressed. Email records showed Lawrence Phillips had personally intervened to shut down diversity initiatives and protect employees accused of discrimination. Most damning was a presentation Valencia uncovered from Legacy's internal servers, a customer segmentation strategy that explicitly categorized passengers by race and ethnicity, with service priorities assigned accordingly. "This is deliberate and systematic," Jasmine said, anger evident in her voice. "They built discrimination into their business model and called it premium customer targeting." As they worked through the evidence, Emily Rodriguez's video continued gaining traction online. Legacy Airlines' stock had dropped 12% since the incident, and corporate partners were beginning to distance themselves from the company. "Brenda Parker just gave another interview," Valencia reported, showing Jasmine her tablet. "She's claiming she's being scapegoated for following company policies." In the interview, Brenda appeared tearful but defiant. "I was just doing what we were trained to do. Legacy Airlines has specific protocols for identifying passengers who might not belong in premium cabins. I'm being punished for following the procedures my supervisors approved." "She's throwing them under the bus," Valencia observed. "Good," Jasmine replied. "Let them fight among themselves. It'll make it easier to expose the whole system." Their strategy session was interrupted by an alert from Valencia's phone. Emily's video just got picked up by national news networks. It's the lead story on CNN. The report included not just the incident itself, but reactions from civil rights organizations, airline industry experts, and passengers who had experienced similar discrimination. The scope had expanded from one flight attendant's actions to questions about industry-wide practices. "This is becoming bigger than Legacy Airlines," Jasmine realized. "It's shining a light on discrimination across the entire industry." Valencia nodded in agreement. "So, how do we respond? This is affecting the company's value by the minute." Jasmine stood by the window, looking out at the garden her mother had lovingly tended for decades. What would Eloise advise in this moment? The answer came clearly. Address the root problem, not just the symptoms. "Schedule a press conference for tomorrow morning," Jasmine decided. "It's time to publicly address what happened and announce our plan to transform Legacy Airlines. Not just disciplinary actions against individuals, but structural changes to the entire organization." "Are you sure?" Valencia asked. "Legal advises keeping a lower profile until we've completed our investigation." "I'm sure," Jasmine replied. "My mother didn't raise me to hide from difficult conversations. Legacy Airlines will either become a model for inclusion in the industry, or I'll sell it off in pieces. There's no middle ground on discrimination." As they finalized plans for the press conference, Jasmine reflected on how her personal loss and professional challenge had converged. Her mother's funeral and the discrimination incident had occurred within the same 24 hours, creating a pivotal moment that would define not just her leadership but her legacy. Eloise had always told her, "When you have the power to make change, you also have the responsibility." Tomorrow, Jasmine would honor that teaching by taking a public stand against the discrimination that had been normalized within Legacy Airlines, and perhaps throughout the industry. Do you think corporate culture can truly change, or are some problems too deeply rooted to fix? Comment number 1, if you believe transformation is possible, or number 2, if you think some companies just can't be saved. Hit that like button if you're moved by how Jasmine is honoring her mother's memory through her actions, and subscribe to see the dramatic showdown at tomorrow's press conference. By 9 o'clock the next morning, the conference room at Atlanta's Meridian Hotel was filled beyond capacity. Journalists from every major network and publication jostled for position, cameras and microphones at the ready. The previous day's viral video had transformed what might have been a local story into national news, with Legacy Airlines becoming the focal point for a larger conversation about discrimination in the travel industry. Jasmine sat quietly backstage, reviewing her notes one final time. She was dressed in a tailored navy suit, professional but understated. The diamond pendant with her mother's photo remained around her neck, a source of strength and purpose. "We're ready when you are," Valencia said, tablet in hand. "Emily Rodriguez is here as you requested. Our security team has confirmed Brenda Parker and her attorney are in the audience as well." "Good," Jasmine nodded. "And Lawrence Phillips?" He declined our invitation but sent a Legacy Airlines legal representative instead. Several board members are present, looking nervous. Jasmine took a deep breath. "Let's do this." The room fell silent as Jasmine stepped to the podium, cameras flashing and reporters leaning forward in anticipation. For many, this was their first time seeing the normally private tech billionaire in person. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady and clear. "My name is Jasmine Winters, CEO of Innosphere Technologies and the new owner of Legacy Airlines. 3 days ago, while traveling to Atlanta for my mother's funeral, I experienced something that millions of people of color face every day: blatant discrimination." Jasmine recounted the incident without embellishment, her composed delivery making the details all the more powerful. She acknowledged Emily Rodriguez, who had courageously recorded the encounter, then addressed the larger implications. "What happened to me on that flight wasn't an isolated incident. It was the product of a corporate culture that normalized discrimination and retaliated against those who spoke up." Since the video became public, over 200 current and former Legacy employees have come forward with similar stories. Our investigation has uncovered systematic practices designed to provide inferior service to passengers of color while protecting those responsible from accountability. Murmurs spread through the audience as Jasmine displayed excerpts from internal documents on the screen behind her, carefully selected to demonstrate the problem while protecting sensitive information. Legacy Airlines didn't just allow discrimination, it institutionalized it, Jasmine continued. Service protocols explicitly directed staff to exercise discretion based on whether passengers fit the Legacy brand image. Code for racial and ethnic profiling. Complaints were systematically buried. Employees who raised concerns were marginalized or pushed out. She paused, making eye contact with the Legacy Airlines representative who shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "As the new owner of Legacy Airlines, I take full responsibility for addressing these failures. Effective immediately, I am announcing the following changes." Jasmine outlined a comprehensive transformation plan. A zero-tolerance policy for discrimination with clear enforcement mechanisms. Mandatory bias training for all employees, from flight attendants to executives. An independent review board to investigate discrimination complaints. A passenger bill of rights ensuring equal treatment regardless of race, ethnicity, or appearance. And, most significantly, the termination of executives who had participated in or covered up discriminatory practices. "This isn't just about removing individuals who acted inappropriately," Jasmine emphasized. "It's about dismantling a system that enabled and rewarded discrimination. Legacy Airlines will become a model for inclusion and equal treatment in the travel industry, or it will cease to exist under my ownership." As Jasmine concluded her prepared remarks, a commotion erupted at the back of the room. Brenda Parker, accompanied by her attorney, pushed toward the microphone set up for questions. "Ms. Parker appears to have something to say," Jasmine observed calmly. "In the interest of transparency, I'm willing to hear her perspective." The room fell silent as Brenda reached the microphone, her attorney whispering urgently in her ear. "Ms. Winters is trying to make me the scapegoat for company policies," Brenda declared, her voice quavering slightly. "I was just following the training I received. We were taught to identify passengers who might not belong in premium cabins. I'm being singled out for doing my job. Are you acknowledging that Legacy Airlines trained you to discriminate against certain passengers?" Jasmine asked. "We were taught to use our judgment about who belongs in first class," Brenda replied defensively. And what criteria did you use to determine I didn't belong there? Brenda hesitated, realizing the trap she'd walked into. It wasn't about race. It was about presentation. You weren't dressed like our typical first-class passengers. So you physically assaulted me because you didn't approve of my casual clothes while traveling to my mother's funeral? Jasmine's voice remained measured, highlighting the absurdity of the claim. I felt threatened, Brenda insisted, but her argument was weakening with each exchange. The video shows otherwise, Ms. Parker, but your point about following company protocols is precisely why we're addressing the systemic issues at Legacy Airlines, not just individual actions. Sensing Brenda was floundering, her attorney attempted to redirect the conversation, but Jasmine maintained control of the narrative. This isn't about public shaming, Ms. Parker. It's about accountability and change. The real issue is the corporate culture that encouraged discriminatory behavior and protected those who engaged in it. As Brenda and her attorney retreated from the microphone, a journalist asked about the executive changes Jasmine had mentioned. Effective immediately, Lawrence Phillips is no longer employed by Legacy Airlines, Jasmine announced. As HR director, he played a central role in developing and enforcing discriminatory policies, then covering up complaints. Several other executives implicated in our investigation are also being removed. Their severance will be contingent on full cooperation with our continued investigation. The press conference continued for another hour, with Jasmine answering questions about specific changes and timelines. She introduced Emily Rodriguez, acknowledging her courage in recording the incident, and announced that Emily had accepted a position heading a new customer experience advisory board. Ms. Rodriguez showed the kind of integrity and courage we want throughout our organization, Jasmine explained. She saw wrongdoing and took action, despite having nothing personal to gain. As the event concluded, Valencia whispered news in Jasmine's ear. Legacy Airline stock, which had been in free fall, had stabilized and begun to recover as investors responded positively to the transparency and decisive action. Later that afternoon, in a private meeting room, Jasmine sat with Valencia reviewing the impact of the press conference. The response has been overwhelmingly positive, Valencia reported. Civil rights organizations are praising our approach. Industry analysts are calling it a watershed moment for addressing discrimination in the travel sector. Even competitors are announcing reviews of their own practices. And internally? Jasmine asked. Mixed, as expected. Many employees are relieved and hopeful. Others, particularly those close to the former executives, are resistant. Lawrence Phillips is already threatening a wrongful termination lawsuit. Let him, Jasmine replied confidently. Our documentation is comprehensive. An alert appeared on Valencia's tablet. Brenda Parker just announced she's accepting a plea deal on the assault charge. She'll make a public apology and perform community service instead of facing jail time. Jasmine nodded. That's appropriate. This was never about punishing one person. It's about changing the system. As evening approached, Jasmine returned to her mother's house, now quieter without the activity of the funeral preparations. She sat in Eloise's garden, reflecting on the whirlwind of events since the incident on the plane. The diamond pendant felt warm against her skin as she held it gently, looking at her mother's smiling face in the tiny photo. I think you'd be proud, Mom, she whispered. Not because I used my power, but because of how I chose to use it. In the distance, the sun set over Atlanta, casting long shadows across the garden Eloise had tended so carefully. Tomorrow would bring new challenges in transforming Legacy Airlines. But tonight, Jasmine found peace in knowing she was honoring her mother's most important lesson. Dignity wasn't something to be earned or granted based on wealth or status. It was the birthright of every human being. The initial wave of positive response to Jasmine's press conference gradually gave way to a more complex reality. Transforming an entrenched corporate culture would not happen overnight, nor would it proceed without resistance. 3 weeks after announcing her plan to overhaul Legacy Airlines, Jasmine faced growing opposition from within the organization. Valencia's morning briefing in the newly established transition headquarters in Atlanta painted a concerning picture. Lawrence Phillips isn't going quietly, she reported. displaying internal communications on her tablet. He's rallying support among middle management, claiming your changes will compromise service standards and undermine the legacy brand. Jasmine reviewed the messages with a frown. Phillips and his allies were carefully avoiding explicit references to race, instead couching their resistance in concerns about maintaining our premium customer experience and preserving Legacy's distinctive culture. They're using coded language to continue the same discriminatory practices, Jasmine observed. We need to address this directly. The resistance wasn't limited to internal grumbling. Death threats had begun arriving at Jasmine's offices, forcing her to increase security. Conservative commentators questioned whether the incident had been exaggerated for political purposes. Several longtime corporate clients had quietly shifted their business to other airlines, citing uncertainty during the transition period. Most concerning was information from Valencia's network of informants within Legacy. Lawrence Phillips had been holding secret meetings with key managers, instructing them to slow-walk implementation of the new policies while documenting any service issues that could be attributed to the changes. They're deliberately trying to sabotage the transformation, Valencia explained, creating problems they can blame on the new inclusive policies. Jasmine's security chief, Darnell Johnson, entered with another update. Ms. Winters, we've confirmed that Daniel Hayes has been meeting with Lawrence Phillips. Their conversation suggests they're discussing a potential buyout offer to acquire Legacy Airlines from you. Hayes? Jasmine raised an eyebrow. The same passenger who witnessed the incident and later expressed regret for not speaking up. The very same, Darnell confirmed. It appears his apparent change of heart may have been strategic. Our sources indicate he and Phillips are assembling investors to make you an offer, betting you'll want to cut your losses after the controversy. Jasmine laughed without humor. They clearly don't know me very well. The situation grew more complex when formal charges were filed against Brenda Parker for the assault. Despite her earlier agreement to a plea deal, she had changed course and now claimed she was being persecuted for following company protocols. Her attorney made the rounds on cable news shows, portraying Brenda as a scapegoat for policies implemented by management. She's not entirely wrong, Jasmine admitted during a strategy session with her leadership team. Brenda was operating within a system that encouraged profiling passengers. That doesn't excuse her actions, but it does highlight why we need comprehensive change, not just removing individuals. While the public relations battle continued, Jasmine took a more direct approach with Legacy Airlines employees. She organized small group meetings with staff across all levels of the organization, from baggage handlers to pilots, listening to their experiences and concerns. In one such meeting with flight attendants at the Atlanta hub, a veteran crew member named Thomas Wilson spoke up. Ms. Winters, I've been with Legacy for 22 years, and I've seen how these customer service protocols evolved. Many of us were uncomfortable with them, but when people complained, they found themselves with reduced hours or unfavorable routes. Tell me more about these protocols, Jasmine encouraged. Thomas explained how flight attendants were trained to identify passengers who might need additional verification of their seating assignment, criteria that overwhelmingly targeted people of color. Those who didn't enforce these unofficial policies were labeled not team players and faced subtle retaliation. It wasn't just Brenda. Another flight attendant named Sophia Chen added, "Many of us were trapped in a system where following discriminatory practices was necessary for career survival." These conversations revealed the depth of the problem and also identified potential allies for change. Not everyone at Legacy Airlines had embraced the discriminatory culture. Many had simply felt powerless to challenge it. Meanwhile, Valencia's investigation uncovered more troubling evidence. Lawrence Phillips and several other executives had systematically blocked qualified minorities from promotion for years. HR records showed a clear pattern of biased performance reviews and manipulated advancement criteria designed to maintain a predominantly white leadership structure. The discrimination wasn't just aimed at passengers, Valencia reported. It permeated hiring, promotion, and retention practices throughout the company. Armed with this evidence, Jasmine's legal team expanded their focus, preparing employment discrimination cases against the former executives while strengthening the company's defense against Brenda Parker's claims. The situation reached a turning point when Emily Rodriguez, now heading the Customer Experience Advisory Board, discovered recordings of a strategy meeting where Lawrence Phillips and his allies explicitly discussed ways to undermine Jasmine's reforms. "We need to document every service delay, every customer complaint during this transition," Phillips could be heard saying. "Build a case that these inclusive policies are hurting the business. Once we have enough evidence of declining service standards, the board will have to reconsider." The recording also revealed the connection to Daniel Hayes, who had promised financing for a management buyout if they could demonstrate that Jasmine's leadership was damaging the company's value. "This changes everything," Jasmine said when Valencia played the recording for her. "They've moved from passive resistance to active sabotage." With this evidence in hand, Jasmine implemented the next phase of her strategy. She called an emergency board meeting, presenting the recordings and additional documentation of the systematic discrimination and current sabotage efforts. "Legacy Airline stands at a crossroads," she told the stunned board members. "We can either embrace comprehensive transformation and set a new standard for the industry, or we can continue fighting against progress until the company's reputation and value are irreparably damaged." The evidence was too compelling to ignore. The board unanimously endorsed Jasmine's transformation plan and approved legal action against the former executives involved in the sabotage efforts. With the board's full support, Jasmine accelerated implementation of the new policies. The independent review board began processing the backlog of discrimination complaints, providing remedies for past incidents while establishing new accountability mechanisms. Brenda Parker, confronted with evidence that undermined her narrative of being a scapegoat, accepted a revised plea deal, making a public apology and agreeing to participate in the development of anti-bias training materials based on her experience. Lawrence Phillips and his co-conspirators faced not only termination but legal consequences for their actions, including potential criminal charges for evidence tampering and corporate sabotage. As these developments unfolded, something unexpected happened. Industry leaders began reaching out to Jasmine, expressing interest in adopting similar reforms. Civil rights organizations offered partnerships to develop best practices. Legacy Airline's transparent approach to addressing discrimination was gradually transforming from a liability into a competitive advantage. 6 months after the incident, Jasmine stood in her office overlooking the Atlanta skyline, reviewing customer satisfaction data with Valencia. "Overall ratings are up 12%, Valencia reported. Complaints about discriminatory treatment are down 93%. Employee satisfaction has improved across all departments, and our stock price has not only recovered but increased 15% above pre-incident levels." "What about the resistance?" Jasmine asked. "Still there, but diminishing," Valencia acknowledged. "Some longtime employees have chosen to leave rather than adapt to the new culture. Others who were initially skeptical have become advocates after seeing the positive results." Jasmine nodded thoughtfully. "Change never comes without resistance. My mother used to say that progress happens when the cost of maintaining the status quo becomes greater than the cost of change." The transformation of Legacy Airlines wasn't complete, but it had reached a tipping point where momentum now favored progress over regression. What had begun as a painful incident of discrimination had catalyzed fundamental change, not just within one company, but potentially across an entire industry. As Jasmine prepared for a follow-up press conference to mark 6 months since the incident, she reflected on how her personal grief and professional challenge had converged to create unexpected opportunity for meaningful change. The path hadn't been easy, but as Eloise Winters had often told her daughter, nothing worth doing ever is. 1 year after the infamous slap that reverberated throughout the airline industry, Legacy Airlines no longer existed, at least not under that name. Jasmine Winters stood at the podium in John F. Kennedy International Airport's newly renovated Terminal 5, addressing a crowd gathered for the official launch of Horizon Airways. "Today marks not just a rebranding," Jasmine told the assembled media, employees, and industry representatives, but the completion of a fundamental transformation in how we approach air travel. Horizon Airways is built on a simple premise. Every passenger deserves dignity, respect, and exceptional service, not based on how they look, what they wear, or assumptions about their worth, but simply because they chose to fly with us. The journey to this moment had been challenging, but ultimately rewarding. After addressing the immediate crisis following the incident, Jasmine had made the bold decision to completely reimagine the airline from the ground up. The name change from Legacy to Horizon symbolized the shift from an outdated approach to a forward-looking vision. Behind Jasmine on the stage stood Valencia Washington, now president of Horizon Airways, Emily Rodriguez, chief of customer experience, and Shannon Williams, the flight attendant who had demonstrated true professionalism during Jasmine's return flight and now headed flight attendant training. The transformation had been comprehensive. Every aspect of the airline's operations had been examined and redesigned with inclusion as a core principle. The signature Horizon blue uniforms worn by staff were designed for functionality and comfort rather than enforcing gender stereotypes. The company logo, a stylized Horizon line forming an infinite path, represented the limitless potential when barriers were removed. Most importantly, Horizon's corporate culture had been rebuilt from scratch. The discriminatory passenger prioritization system had been replaced with truly premium service standards applied equally to all travelers. Hiring and promotion practices now emphasize diversity of experience and perspective. The independent review board established during the crisis had become a permanent part of the corporate structure, ensuring accountability remained a priority. After her remarks, Jasmine mingled with attendees, pausing to speak with a former Legacy flight attendant named Michael Chen. "I almost quit during the transition," he admitted. "I'd been with Legacy for 15 years and was resistant to change. But I have to tell you, Ms. Winters, I'm proud to work for Horizon now. For the first time in my career, I feel like our success is measured by how well we serve all our passengers, not just the ones who fit a certain profile. Such transformations hadn't happened without casualties." Lawrence Phillips and several other former executives were still embroiled in legal proceedings related to their attempts to sabotage the company's reformation. Daniel Hayes's involvement in the attempted hostile takeover had become public, damaging his reputation and forcing him to step down as CEO of his pharmaceutical company. Brenda Parker, whose slap had catalyzed these events, was now working for a small regional airline, her once promising career permanently derailed by her actions and the subsequent exposure of her discriminatory practices. Following the launch event, Jasmine boarded Horizon's inaugural flight from New York to San Francisco, seated in the exact same first-class seat where she had been slapped a year earlier. This time, she traveled openly as the owner, wearing a simple but elegant pantsuit rather than the casual clothes she'd worn while grieving. Shannon Williams, who had specifically requested to work this symbolic flight, greeted Jasmine warmly. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Winters. It's an honor to have you with us today." "The honor is mine, Shannon," Jasmine replied. "None of this would have been possible without professionals like you showing what exceptional service really means." As other passengers boarded, many recognized Jasmine from media coverage of Horizon's launch. Several stopped to share their own stories of discrimination during air travel and express appreciation for the changes she'd implemented. One passenger, a young black woman traveling with her daughter, paused beside Jasmine's seat. "My daughter wants to be like you when she grows up," she said quietly. "Not because you're wealthy, but because you used your power to make things better for everyone." The comment touched Jasmine deeply. As the plane prepared for takeoff, she reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past year, from the personal grief of losing her mother to the professional challenge of transforming an entire company culture. The diamond pendant containing Eloise's photo remained around Jasmine's neck, a constant reminder of her mother's influence. Eloise had always taught her that true leadership wasn't about wielding power, but about using whatever influence you had to create positive change. Horizon Airways had quickly become a case study in corporate transformation. Industry awards for customer satisfaction and workplace culture had followed the operational changes. More significantly, other airlines had begun adopting similar policies, recognizing that inclusive practices were increasingly important to travelers making booking decisions. The scholarship program Jasmine had established in her mother's name, the Eloise Winters Opportunity Fund, was already supporting dozens of underprivileged youth pursuing careers in aviation and technology. Several of the first scholarship recipients were now interning at Horizon, bringing fresh perspectives to the company. As the plane reached cruising altitude, Jasmine gazed out the window at the actual horizon stretching endlessly before her. The incident that had begun with humiliation and pain had ultimately created an opportunity for systemic change far beyond what she could have imagined. A flight attendant she didn't recognize approached with a glass of water. "Ms. Winters? A passenger in row 23 recognized you and wanted to share something. She was on that flight last year and witnessed what happened. She says the changes you've made to the airline inspired her to address discrimination in her own workplace." Jasmine thanked the attendant and sipped her water, marveling at how a single moment could create such far-reaching ripples. One confrontation had exposed deeply rooted problems, creating an opportunity to rebuild not just a company, but potentially influence an entire industry's approach to dignity and inclusion. As the plane soared across America, Jasmine opened her laptop to review plans for Horizon's next initiative, partnering with transportation companies across multiple sectors to develop industry-wide standards for inclusive customer service. What had begun as a response to discrimination was evolving into a movement for transformation that extended far beyond one airline. The diamond pendant caught the sunlight streaming through the window as Jasmine touched it gently. "We did it, Mom," she whispered. "We turned injustice into opportunity, just like you taught me." In that quiet moment of reflection, Jasmine understood that true power wasn't in the ability to acquire companies or accumulate wealth, but in the capacity to transform systems that had long seemed immutable. 1 year ago, a flight attendant had slapped her, unaware she owned the plane. Today, that incident had catalyzed changes that would benefit countless passengers who would never know her name. And that, Jasmine decided as the plane continued its journey westward, was a legacy worth building. What would you do if you had the power to change an entire industry? Have you ever witnessed discrimination and wished you could make a difference? Comment below with your thoughts and experiences. If this story inspired you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that one person really can create meaningful change. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember, true power isn't measured by what you own, but by how you use your influence to improve the world around you. This powerful story teaches us that dignity isn't determined by appearance or social status, but is the birthright of every human being. When Jasmine faced discrimination, she could have simply fired one employee and moved on. Instead, she recognized that meaningful change requires addressing the root causes of discrimination, not just its symptoms. True leadership means using your position to create systemic change, rather than merely wielding power for personal gain. By transforming legacy airlines into Horizon Airways, Jasmine showed that corporate culture can evolve when leaders commit to authentic values and back words with actions. The story reminds us that discrimination often hides behind policies and protocols that seem neutral but disproportionately target marginalized groups. Challenging these systems takes courage, persistence, and strategic thinking. Perhaps most importantly, we learn that a single moment of injustice, when confronted directly, can create ripple effects that transform entire industries. Each of us has the power to speak up when we witness discrimination, knowing that our actions might inspire others to create change in their own spheres of influence.